Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned to talk about something that isn't stately at all. In fact, is pretty trashy. That's right, we're talking about the return of Garbaugust. Garbaugust, the greatest reading event that's ever been created on BookTube, which was created last year by Criminali. So this is a reading event devoted to reading trashy books, or books that are considered trash by society. Even though very often a lot of these books are pretty good. I mean, a lot of them are crap. I mean, let's be honest. But some of these books are really pretty good. Even if society doesn't think so. So, like I said, Criminali created this reading event last year. And it was very popular. It's going to be even more popular this year, though, because this year it's huge. I mean, the co-hosts for this event, I think it's everybody on BookTube. I mean, everybody's doing this apparently. And it was an awful lot of fun last year. It's going to be even more fun this year, I think. Criminali's audience, I think, is doubled or tripled since last year, which is encouraging because Ollie, he talks about a lot of books that you just don't see anybody else talking about on BookTube very often. And, you know, he reads entertaining, fun books, crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. And this is a great event. So let's talk about Garbaugust and what Garbaugust is going to look like here at the Manor. Of course, it's going to be very unusual, Roger, because, you know, we always read the best of everything. We always read great stuff. So, what? You ridiculous numbskull! Why are you wasting your time with trash when you can be reading a classic of literature? You still haven't read the second part of Varney, you ridiculous peasant! Anyway, we always read great stuff over here at the Manor. And so what am I going to be reading? Well, there's four themed weeks for Garbaugust. And I have a pile of trashy possibilities. How much I actually read, of course, depends on how much time I have. Last August, I did pretty well. Last August, I had a lot of time. But I don't know about this year. But week one, there are themes for all the weeks. So week one, men's adventure or romance. Of course, Roger and I are too full of toxic masculinity to read romance books. We're too macho, so we are going to, of course, read something along the lines of men's adventure. So the first thing I should mention is that there is one book that's not trash that I'm going to be reading, which is for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club in August, and that is going to be this book, The Gladiator by Philip Wiley. It does kind of look kind of trashy, but I don't think it really is. This is a book that is actually pretty influential in science fiction. It probably influenced the creation of Superman. It's about this guy right there who gains superpowers. And this was written in 1930, part of Roger's Cheap Old Book Club. But everything else I read is going to be absolute trash. So, men's adventure. I have a few books I'm thinking of reading for men's adventure. First of all, I want to continue the saga of The Survivalist, which is a book series I found out about from Criminali's channel. He did a lot of episodes and reviews about the Survivalist books. I only read the first one, and I read that last year for Garbaugust. I kept meaning to continue this series and never did. So you know what? Here we are, Garbaugust 2. So it's time to read the second book in the Survivalist series. It'll only take me, how many books were these? It was like, I don't know how many years it's going to take me to finish the Survivalist series, but Jerry Ahern's The Survivalist, Book 2, The Nightmare Begins. It didn't begin in the last book, really, even though there was a nuclear war. The nightmare really begins in Book 2. You can tell this poor guy's head is disappearing into this other guy's nose. It's a nightmare. The nightmare begins. Now, this next book was kindly sent to me by Greg at Another Bibliophile Reads. This is a series he's really fond of. This is Blade. There are actually two trashy paperback series called Blade. No relation to Marvel Comics' Vampire Hunting Blade. I read the first book of the other Blade series last year, but this is Richard Blade. You can't really see it that well, but it says Richard Blade. Little Richard there. Richard Blade. So this is Looters of Tharn. This is book 19 in this heroic fantasy series. Blade is always naked on the covers of these books. You know? Okay, no clothes for Blade. And he looks like he's going to be going up against some sort of multi-legged robot monstrosity. You've got the woman screaming there on the grass, you know, as will happen. And so Blade, pretty good chance I'm going to be reading this. Now this book, I meant to read last year and didn't. Maybe it's so trashy. It's so trashy. It's like the ultimate Garbaugust book. I'm almost afraid to read it. This is Operation Super Miss by Andrew Offutt, the author of piles and piles of paperback porn. And he also wrote this, as well as some heroic fantasy stuff. But this is Operation Super Miss. So this isn't really men's adventure, I guess, because there's a woman on it. Who knows? I'm going to say it counts. I'm going to say it counts for men's, even though there's... I'm going to say it counts. Why not? Operation Super Miss. The super agent of the 70s who makes Wonder Woman look like Nancy Drew. So, yeah. Eventually I'll read this book. Maybe I'll read it this year. We'll see. So that's week 1. So week 2... paperbacks from hell, or vintage smut. Well, we're a couple Puritans over here. We're not going to read vintage smut, but we will read paperbacks from hell. Now, one book that I've been wanting to read literally for years is this one. This is Blackwater by Malcolm McDowell. And you might say, hey, that's a hardcover, and it's by that writer Michael McDowell, which everybody loves so much. That can't count, can't it? Well, let's go to the ultimate reference book for this sort of thing, Paperbacks from Hell by Grady Hendrix. And if we go in here, why, there's a whole section about Michael McDowell, and here is the Blackwater series as it was originally published in 6 parts. So it's obviously Paperbacks from Hell, even though Michael McDowell wrote Paperbacks from Hell. He just happens to be a really good writer. A great writer, actually. There's the Elementals, which I've read before. That's really, really good. But Blackwater is kind of his epic of horror. And I believe it was his last horror novel, Blackwater. And like I said, it was originally published in 6 paperbacks. So yeah, official confirmation that this does count for Paperbacks from Hell. Now this is massive, so I'm going to have to really pull out all the stops to read this in a week. It's probably going to be a week and a half, to be honest. But we'll see what I can do with it. We'll see what I can get away with. So, Blackwater. I read the first book of that serialized novel back in the 90s. I got a used copy. And it was great. The first part was great. And I never found any of the other copies because this was back in the 90s before, you know, there was Amazon or eBay or any of that stuff. So it was like the early 90s. So I never finished this story, but now I'm going to. I'm going to read Blackwater. Definitely I'm going to read that. That's Paperbacks from Hell there. Number 3, novelizations or books by famous people. Okay, I don't know that I even have any books by famous people, so I guess I'm going to have to go with novelizations. Darn! So I've got a few in mind. First of all, I also want to point out that it's also book trek this entire summer. And so I am reading Star Trek, and I will read a Star Trek at some point during August. This is Star Trek 2, although I'll probably end up reading this book this month. So I don't know which one I'll be reading for Garbaugust, but I will read a Star Trek book, which counts for book trek and Garbaugust. Now I have a couple of big projects starting in Garbaugust. And one is to, I have this thing. I have a series of books. And I'm going to start this Garbaugust. And I'm going to try to read all of these books and finish up next Garbaugust. So all year, there's going to be a bit of Garbaugust. It's, it's a project. Shut up. I don't have too many projects. Anyway, it's a project. So, and this is also going to be a buddy read with Gareth at Books, Songs, and Other Magic. He's reading the same book I am. I'm going to read this. This is Death of the Planet of the Apes. So this takes place, I think, between Planet of the Apes and Beneath the Planet of the Apes, and then during Beneath the Planet of the Apes, but from Taylor's point of view or something. I haven't read it yet, but it's Death of the Planet of the Apes, because I'm going to have like a whole year of reading Planet of the Apes books, because I got a pile of them. So this is Death of the Planet of the Apes, and I'll be reading this for Garbaugust. But since you're curious, I can tell, what are the other Planet of the Apes books that I'll be reading this year? Well, there is also Tales from the Forbidden Zone, a bunch of Planet of the Apes short stories. There's the Planet of the Apes Omnibus Volume 1 that has Beneath the Planet of the Apes and Escape from the Planet of the Apes, the novelizations for those two films. Then I've got the Planet of the Apes Omnibus 2. This is a fat one. This has Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, Battle for the Planet of the Apes, and the god-awful Planet of the Apes from 2001. That terrible, terrible movie is in here as well, and I'll read it just to torture myself. Then it's Planet of the Apes Omnibus Volume 4. Actually, no, I'm on Volume 3. Never mind that. Volume 3, I grabbed the wrong ape. This is also a big, giant, fat one. This has the novelizations from the television show. There was a live-action television show in the 70s of the Planet of the Apes. You probably have never seen it, but I think it's available on DVD, I don't think you could stream it anywhere. But it was a fun show, if you like Planet of the Apes. And this has 4 books of novelized episodes: Man the Fugitive, Escape to Tomorrow, Journey into Terror, and Lord of the Apes. All of these by George Alec Effinger. Okay, now we're on Volume 4. This also has novelized episodes of the cartoon. So much like the Star Trek cartoon, they did novelized episodes of the Planet of the Apes cartoon. Visions from Nowhere, Escape from Terror Lagoon. That's a Garbaugust title if there ever was one. And Man, the Hunted Animal. And these were written by William Arrow. That sounds like a real name. And to close it out, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which is a novelization by Alex Irvine. And then, if all goes according to plan and I get all those read, next Garbaugust, I'll be reading this. War for the Planet of the Apes by Greg Cox. War for the Planet of the Apes. That's a lot of apes. In fact, there's going to be more apes because, you have to read comic books in this life. And it's about time I revisited this. So my favorite black and white Marvel magazine, Marvel used to have black and white comic magazines, was Planet of the Apes. They had a magazine about Planet of the Apes, a comic book magazine. But it also had articles and other cool stuff like that. And for a while, Boom Studios had the rights to Planet of the Apes, and they reprinted all of the Planet of the Apes comics in 4 volumes. And like I said, this was an awesome comic book. And this is Volume 1 of the Archive Edition. And these just have magnificent covers. This is Volume 2. And Volume 2 has like the Planet of the Apes, the movie novelization of Planet of the Apes and Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Then we've got Volume 3, Planet of the Apes Archive. This has Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. And I think, is Battle for the Planet of the Apes in here? No, this has Escape from the Planet of the Apes and Battle for the Planet of the Apes. No, Escape from the Planet of the Apes and Conquest. I can get this right. And then Look at that cover. That's awesome. Archive Volume 4. This has Battle for the Planet of the Apes in it, as well as some other apey stuff. I mean, I've got so much ape stuff to read, because Planet of the Apes, you know, it's my favorite film franchise. But wait, I have another project that's just like this. Also, this Garbaugust, for that novelization week, I'm going to be reading this. It's Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. So I'm going to be reading this, and then I've got a bunch of other Indiana Jones books that I've got to read this year, including Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, then The Last Crusade. This was actually the very last Indiana Jones movie. It was. This was the last Indiana Jones movie. They never made any more after this. No, they didn't. And then there was a novel series, and I have the ones by Rob McGregor. I've got this. This is Peril at Delphi. Then we've got The Unicorn's Legacy. These have great covers on them. Then we've got Indiana Jones and the Dance of the Giants. Indiana Jones and the Dance of the Giants. Then we've got Indiana Jones and the Seven Veils. Indiana Jones and the Seven Veils. He looks like he's had a hard time there, Indiana Jones. He's had a rough day. Then it's Indiana Jones and the Genesis Deluge. Genesis Deluge. And then, next Garbaugust, if all goes well, I'll be closing it out, because this is the last Indiana Jones book I own. Indiana Jones and the Interior World. The Interior World. This cover is a little messed up, but you know, what do you do? I got them all used. So that was that. See? It's epic. It's epic, all this Garbaugusty stuff. So yeah, that was novelizations. And then 4 is Anything Goes. Anything Goes for 4. This is a tough one. Okay. One thing I do have to read is my mother sent me this series of books that looks really trashy. This is Diaries of the Family Dracul by Jeannie Colagridis? I don't know. I can't pronounce anything. But this is the first one, Covenant with the Vampire. The dark, sensual story, never revealed in Dracula. It was not revealed. So Covenant with the Vampire, this looks trashy. Then it continues the saga. I probably will only read the first book in Garbaugust, but I will continue the saga with Children of the Vampire. And then, step back. It's Dracula. Look at sexy Dracula there. And this happy dog, Sexy Dracula and the Happy Dog. That's what this book should be called. But instead it's called Children of the Vampire. That's what it's called. And then it closes out with Lord of the Vampires. Lord of the Vampires. So I probably actually for Garbaugust will only read this. Will I have any other time? I hope so, because there's a lot of trashy books from hell, paperbacks from hell, that I do want to read. And I want to at least get one more in besides Blackwater. And I have a few that I've been meaning to get to. There's Panzer Spirit. I've been meaning to get I've been meaning to get to this one forever. Tom Townsend. This is supposed to be absolutely terrible. And it's supposed to be cursed. But I'll read it anyway. Panzer Spirit. I've been meaning to get to that. Then there's this trashy looking book by Ray Russell, Incubus. Greg at Another Bibliophile reads. He read this and he tells me it is sincerely trashy. So there's that. This is actually coming at the tail end of Paperbacks from Hell. This is the early 90s with the what is this? The Del Abyss line. The Del Abyss line. This is the Orpheus Process. The Orpheus Process. Yeah, there you go. The Orpheus Process. Not the Orifice Process, although that would be even trashier. Then we've got John Ferris, Son of the Endless Night. I do, because this is also, step back, look at the demon, Terrible Child and Demon. It kind of screams Garbaugust. We've got The God Project, but will I actually read that? Probably not. One I do want to read has another creepy kid on it, and that's The Nameless by Ramsey Campbell. The Nameless by Ramsey Campbell. It's The Nameless with this kid that's on fire, but doesn't seem to mind. Doesn't seem to mind that they're on fire. I do have a hardback from hell, which is The Parasite by Ramsey Campbell. There's just so many choices. There's so many choices. And you know what? I didn't even read the novelization of Prophecy last year. I might read this early going into Garbaugust. So much stuff. It's just so much possibility with crappy, trashy books for Garbaugust. So it's going to be fun. You know, this event is always fun. And then after that, we've got Sumerian September. And that's it, I think, for events. I don't think there are any other events going on after that. I heard a couple people mention the idea of Elric October, but it seems like there's just too much Elric to read in 1 month. My head might explode if I tried to do that, Roger. We shouldn't do that. Anyway, I guess that's everything. We'll catch you next time. You filthy perverts! Can't a man be left alone with his giant-sized man thing? Ah!